Hey guys, tonight we're heading back to ancient Rome, not to the Senate or the Colosseum, but to something much softer, a quiet Sunday in a countryside villa where nobody's rushing, sandals are optional, and the most pressing decision of the day might be whether to take a nap in the sun or the shade. If you think you're strong enough to stay awake through olive oil tastings, garden strolls, and long baths with no meetings afterward, well, that's ambitious of you. You probably won't survive this kind of peace. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Post your location and local time in the comments. I always love seeing where and when you're drifting off from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake slowly, not to an alarm, not to a task, just to light. It creeps into your room like a cat who knows the door will always be open. The shutters are half drawn. A breeze filters through the cloth hung in the doorway, linen that smells of rosemary and dry sun. Outside, birds are already speaking in quick syllables, punctuated by the rustle of olive branches. You're not in the city. You're in a villa outside of Rome, maybe 10 miles from the capital, maybe more. But you won't be making that journey today. Today is a Sunday, and the only schedule is the slow drift of shade across stone. The bed beneath you is firm, cushioned by woven reeds and a thin mattress stuffed with wool. The pillow is cool. You stretch, letting one hand drop over the side until your fingers graze the tiled floor. A servant has already poured water into a small bronze basin. You splash your face, not to wake up, but to greet yourself. You rise slowly. The tunic waiting for you is soft, faded with washings, cinched at the waist with a worn cord. You slip it over your head and step into sandals without bending to tie them. There's no rush. You pass through the atrium, where the pool in the center is catching the first light of the day. A single leaf floats on the surface. You watch it spin. In the distance, someone is sweeping, not urgently, just removing the night from the tiles. You make your way into the peristyle garden, an open courtyard surrounded by columns, shaded by vines and softened with moss. The floor is warm beneath your feet, even this early. A fountain gurgles softly in the corner, and the smell of lavender carries from a patch near the far wall. This is where the villa breathes. The peristyle isn't large, but it doesn't need to be. It holds space for citrus trees and low shrubs, for one worn bench beneath a fig tree, and for birds who drop in uninvited and are never asked to leave. The air hums, not with effort, but with presence. A slave offers you a tray, flatbread, cheese, honey, and a cluster of grapes that still carry the cool of morning. You sit on the bench and eat slowly, not out of laziness, out of respect. This isn't fuel, it's pleasure. The cheese is soft and faintly sharp. The bread is dense. The honey melts into everything. Later, you'll take a bath, but not yet. For now, you walk, not far, just to the edge of the property, where the hills dip gently, and you can see the rows of vines reaching up in uneven lines toward the ridgeline. Someone is tending the vineyard. Their movements are slow, methodical. This isn't harvest season, just maintenance, a little trimming, a little coaxing. Vines, like people, grow better when no one rushes them. You return to the villa, pass through the triclinium, the dining room. It's empty now. A few cushions are still piled from yesterday's lunch. A servant is wiping the mosaic floor with a cloth. The room smells faintly of wine, oil, and thyme. The tiles underfoot depict a sea monster devouring a sailor who looks only mildly concerned. You've always liked this detail. In a side room, someone is reading aloud. A letter, probably, or a passage from Ovid. The voice is low and even, and though you don't understand every word, the cadence is familiar. It's less about meaning now, more about rhythm. You pause near the doorway, listen for a while, and then move on, back in the garden. The sun has climbed just high enough to cast a soft glow across the colonnade. A servant is preparing the bath. You hear the splash of water being poured, the scrape of amphorae against stone, the clink of ceramic lids. The balneum isn't grand, it's private. A small chamber near the back of the villa, with a tepidarium for soaking and a frigidarium for cooling off afterward. The water is already steaming. You undress slowly and slip into the basin, letting the warmth wrap around your legs first, then your chest, then finally your shoulders. The water smells faintly of crushed herbs. You rest your head against the side of the bath and let your arms float. Outside, you can still hear birds. Inside, the stone walls dampen every sound until it feels like you're resting inside the pulse of your own breath. There is no need to speak. There is no schedule to obey. The villa will continue turning with or without you. You close your eyes. The water does the rest. You emerge from the bath slowly, water sliding from your skin in small rivers that the linen cloth quickly captures. The towel is warmed by sunlight left to fall across a bronze rack. You wrap it around your shoulders, not because you're cold, just to linger in the warmth. Your sandals wait nearby. You don't rush to put them on. The floor beneath your feet, still warm from midday heat, is smoother than any leather. You step through the threshold and into the corridor, steam trailing lightly behind you as you return to the peristyle. Now the light has deepened, not yet evening, but no longer morning. Shadows lean farther across the tiles, reaching toward the fountain like silent guests invited to sit beside it. The air holds a new weight, of herbs stirred in kitchen pots, of oil warming in a pan, of fresh bread exhaling in the oven. You pass through a short hallway and step into a shaded tablinum, a reception room that doubles as study and lounge. Your host is reclining on a wide couch, his tunic loosened at the shoulder, sandals off. A scroll is unfurled across his lap, but his eyes aren't on the words. He's watching a bird flit in and out of the garden. You nod. He gestures to the second couch. You sit, not for conversation, not for business, just to sit. A small tray appears, olives, dates, a few thin slices of goat's cheese dusted with mint. The servant sets it down without comment. You reach for a date, tearing it open with slow fingers. Its flesh is rich, its sweetness dark. A jug of wine is uncorked, poured into small cups, thin bronze, rounded at the lip. You drink. The wine is young and cool, not heavy, just enough to remind your tongue that pleasure is allowed in small doses. Conversation drifts in slowly. Your host shares a short recollection of a dream he had the night before, a field of grain turned to glass, then back to wheat again. As he walked through it, you nod. There's no need to interpret. The point is the telling. Next, he speaks of his cousin's visit, how she refused to eat fish for fear of dreaming of storms. You smile. He does not press the story, he lets it float. You shift position. The couch beneath you has grown softer with the afternoon heat. You lean on one elbow, your cup resting in the shallow dish between you. The scroll on the table now holds your attention. It's poetry, Virgil, perhaps, or Catullus. Your host begins to read, not from the start, just a line or two. His voice is steady, measured, respectful, not dramatic. The verse isn't meant to impress, it's meant to settle. Felix qui potui rerum cognoscere causas. Happy is he who can know the causes of things. The phrase floats. You let it land softly between your ribs, where understanding isn't required, only welcome. The room quiets, not because it must, because it wants to. Outside, a bird splashes in the fountain, wings striking water in rhythmic taps. From the kitchen, a spoon clicks against a clay bowl, then stops. The house breathes through these sounds, and you find your breath matching it. A theory once floated by a 19th century historian claimed that rural Roman villas weren't merely escapes from the city, they were experiments in time, places where the calendar lost precision, where the days stretched until they resembled dreams. You believe it now. You rise. Excuse yourself with a tilt of the head. Your host waves his hand without looking. Permission. Farewell. Continuation. You pass back through the atrium. The pool in its center has darkened, reflecting the red clay of the roof tiles and the pale bloom of a single rose caught in the trellis above. You kneel. Touch the water with your fingertips. It's warm. You sit on the edge, barefoot now, your legs stretched in front of you. The edge of your robe lifts slightly in the breeze. A bee investigates your sandal, then moves on. Time stretches. The villa folds around you like linen folds in a basket, soft, layered, carrying the scent of laurel and clean clay. Nothing calls you, as no one needs you, and for the first time today, you close your eyes not to block the world, but to carry it inward, to hold it like warm water cupped in your palms. And for a while, you don't move. When you open your eyes again, the light has softened. It hasn't vanished. It has only slipped further down the walls, resting now just above the floor tiles in long, slanted patterns somewhere in the house. A wooden door has opened. A breeze carries the scent of pressed olive skins and thyme. You stand slowly. Your limbs, once heavy with bath and stillness, respond without protest. You walk barefoot through the atrium, your soles collecting the dust of the day's quiet labor. The villa seems even quieter now, not empty, but contained. You pass the sleeping quarters, each doorway darkened slightly with linen veils that sway faintly in the moving air. In one room, a woman sits on a low stool. She's embroidering a cushion, her needle rising and falling like a breath. She doesn't look up, but the corners of her mouth lift slightly. You nod as you pass. You head toward the portico. From here, you can see the countryside spread in folds of green and gold. The fields roll outward, divided by rows of stone and cypress. In the distance, 2 oxen plod through soil made dark by recent rain. Their handler walks beside them, not shouting, not directing, just walking. The field knows his pace by now. You take a seat on a low stone wall, warmed by the sun's memory. There's a fig tree just beside you, its leaves wide and sighing in the wind. One fruit has dropped to the ground near your feet. You pick it up. It's soft, but intact. You tear it open with your fingers. The pulp, rich and red, seeded and fragrant. You eat slowly, letting the sweetness settle across your tongue. Nothing in the fruit demands attention, but it holds it all the same, back inside. Someone is laughing, not loud, just enough to mark the line between conversation and ease. You hear footsteps in the corridor, two pairs, one lighter than the other. Perhaps guests are preparing to leave, or arrive, or stay longer than planned. It's difficult to tell here, where the hours stretch like cats in afternoon shade. A servant walks across the garden path, carrying a shallow basin. He sees you, lifts his chin, and continues on. His hands are steady, his gait unhurried. You remember now that there will be music later, not a performance, just a flute, maybe a lyre. Someone will pluck the strings beneath the pergola, while others listen from stone benches, their wine cups half full, their eyes following the rhythm of ivy as it climbs the pillars. A passage from Pliny the Younger comes to mind, one of his letters describing his country estate, where the sunroom doubled as a library and the sound of distant labor mixed with the rustle of leaves. He wrote of silence not as absence, but as depth, something to step into, something that wraps around you. You feel that now. Even the silence has texture. You rise again and make your way toward the back garden, where herbs grow in narrow rows: basil, sage, mint, rue. A slave is watering them by hand, pouring slowly from a terracotta jug. He sees you and straightens slightly, then returns to his task. The water splashes gently onto the dark soil. The air smells sharper here, green, crushed, clean. You walk to the edge of the garden, where a stone bench sits beneath an archway of climbing roses. The petals are scattered across the ground like punctuation. You sit. The bench is hard but comforting, solid in a way that makes your posture change. You breathe deeper. Your shoulders soften. Overhead, a dove lands on the wall. It looks at you, then tucks its head beneath one wing. The world does not need watching, and for once, neither do you. There's no pressing task to complete, no scroll to copy, no letter demanding reply. The day has folded neatly into its own rhythm, and you have matched it without an effort. The garden gate opens. A child runs through, barefoot, chased by a dog that is all enthusiasm and no direction. They pause near the herbs, both panting, then tumble into a patch of thyme. The leaves burst with scent. The child laughs. The dog sneezes. You smile. The child's nurse appears in the doorway. She calls softly, once. The child waves but doesn't rise. She doesn't insist. She leans against the frame and waits, arms crossed, her face quiet. You watch this from your bench without needing to interpret. There's nothing to solve, nothing to improve, only something to notice. A fringe historian once proposed that villas were built less for retreat and more for recalibration, that they weren't escapes from the Roman world, but places where its pulse could be felt more clearly, not the civic drum of orders and proclamations, but the slow, arterial rhythm of olives ripening, fountains bubbling, fires warming bread. You look down at your fingers, sticky with fig juice, smelling faintly of thyme. You do not wash them, not yet. You rest them on your lap and lean back into the stone. Above you, the dove shifts its weight. The breeze picks up again, and you begin to feel not that time is passing, but that you are floating inside it. The sun, now descending, casts elongated shadows across the villa's inner walls. You remain seated on the bench beneath the roses, where the day folds itself into something softer. The heat has released its grip, and what lingers is warmth, quiet, familiar, completely without urgency. A dog barks once in the distance, its voice flat with boredom, not alarm. A servant appears with a folded cloth and pitcher. She sets them near the basin just beyond the herb garden, then disappears into the corridor again, her footsteps muffled by dust. You know the cloth is for the evening meal. You're not thinking of eating, not yet. But you know the signs. Even the preparations happen in silence here, as if the villa itself is cautious, not to disturb the stillness it spent the day building. The child is gone now. The time patch is slightly flattened where he lay. The dog, too, has wandered off, perhaps to curl beside a low wall, tail twitching in the last light of day. A breeze stirs the rose petals near your sandals. They dance lightly, aimlessly, then settle again inside the villa. The triclinium is being prepared. You pass through the peristyle once more, barefoot, the soles of your feet brushed with dust and warmth. The dining room is open on one side, its three reclining couches set around a low table in a wide U. The mosaic floor depicts Neptune riding a dolphin, one hand raised, his expression noble but not overly impressed by the sea. The couches are covered in linen, cushions shaped by previous use. You recline to the left side, propped on your elbow. The host enters soon after, nodding slightly in your direction before settling on the couch opposite. Others follow, perhaps two, maybe three, all familiar faces, no introductions, no obligations. The meal begins without a toast. There are dates first, salted, roasted, and warm, then a soft cheese spread across barley cakes, followed by olives cracked open with the edge of a flat spoon. A platter of fish, poached with fennel and lemon, appears next. Everything arrives in quiet rhythm, passed hand to hand without ceremony, only acknowledgement. The host speaks of a new poem copied from Alexandria. He doesn't recite it. He describes it, its mood, its shape, its surprising fondness for describing clouds in long, looping sentences. The others nod. No critique follows. This is not a salon. It is a table, and words are part of the meal. A jug of wine is poured. The cups are small, terracotta, etched with ivy. They sweat slightly from the chill. The wine is light and bright with herbs, infused with wormwood and citrus peel. You drink slowly, not because of the strength, because of the pace. In the far corner, a servant plays a cithara, soft, plucked notes, neither tune nor repetition, just sound that holds the silence together. You eat until full, not until finished. Nothing is hurried. The platter of pears remains untouched for a long while. Then, without discussion, one is peeled and shared. The skin curls from the blade in a single, continuous ribbon. Someone tells a story of a dog who refused to leave the side of a sleeping farmer for 3 days, only rising when the man finally spoke again. It's told plainly, without flourishes. The story is not remarkable, only true. There's a philosophy in that. You feel it here more than you understand it. The conversation quiets. Someone stretches. Someone else shifts their cushion and reaches for the last fig. You take another sip of wine. The sun, now almost gone, draws pale lines across the far wall. Lamps are lit, one by one, their flames caught in shallow bowls of oil. Their glow slow and steady. The light in the room changes, not brighter, just closer. You hear laughter from the kitchen. The scent of boiled herbs has faded, replaced now by wax and warm clay. A scholar once argued that Roman villas were not just homes, they were curated ecosystems of calm, that the furniture placement, the garden layout, the curve of each walkway was designed not for convenience, but to slow the pulse, to guide a person from urgency back into rhythm. You believe it now. Everything you've touched today, every surface you've leaned against, every bowl you've raised to your lips, it has conspired to bring you here, not to impress, not to distract, just to restore. The host rises, slowly, and thanks the group with a slight bow of the head. There is no applause, no standing, just movement. You follow, not because it's expected, because it feels right. Back into the corridor, past the atrium. The water in the central pool glows now with reflected lamplight. One moth flutters in circles near the nearest flame. You pause there again, brushing your hand lightly across the surface of the water. It responds in small, widening ripples. The house settles. A breeze moves through the rooms, like an old guest who no longer needs to knock. You return to your sleeping chamber. The door stands open. Inside, the bed has been made again, blanket folded, pillow aired. On the windowsill, a small lamp flickers with barely enough oil to last the hour. You do not rush to lie down. You remove your sandals, wash your hands in the basin, not because they are dirty, because they've touched so much of the day, and it feels respectful to offer them rest, too. You extinguish the lamp, the room darkens, and the silence, which has followed you from the garden, settles beside you like another blanket. Your body sinks into the low bed, the blanket a light weight across your limbs, not heavy enough to press, but present enough to remind you that rest has rules too. The room is nearly dark now. Only a faint shaft of moonlight pushes its way through the slit in the wooden shutter. The scent of lavender, tucked into a small linen pouch near your pillow, rises softly with your breath. You lie still. The house does not creak. Its silence is complete, but not blank. It's filled with the stored quiet of centuries of evenings, just like this one. Evenings that ended not in triumph or drama, but with clean hands and a soft place to lie down. You listen. There's a breeze somewhere deeper in the villa, catching on a hanging curtain, or perhaps sliding across a courtyard tile still warm from the day. You can almost hear it cooling the stone, the faint contraction of heat becoming memory. Your eyes adjust. The shadow of the oil lamp, now extinguished, leans against the wall like an old friend nodding off. You shift once, the linen beneath you cool, familiar. Your hand moves without thought to the edge of the mattress, fingers finding the carved groove in the wood frame, a small indentation you've traced many nights before. You don't sleep yet. You're not meant to. In this hour, sleep isn't forced, it's invited. A distant sound reaches you, not clear, not sharp, just present, a voice in another room, speaking softly, a line from Virgil or a line from prayer. or perhaps only of a question asked into the dark, more out of habit than hope for an answer. It fades before you can name it. You close your eyes, not tightly, but just enough to test what darkness feels like when it carries no weight. Your thoughts settle like sand stirred in a jar. Each one slows, falls, finds its place. Earlier in the day, when you were resting beneath the fig tree, you noticed how the leaves filtered the sun into soft coins of light. Never the same shape twice. You remember the smell of the cracked fig skin, the warmth of the juice, the way your thumb had pressed the pulp without rush. You remember the child's laughter, the dog's sneeze, the pearl silver shimmer of the herb leaves just after watering. Each memory drifts back now, not as a reel of images, but as fragments that belong only to the present moment. None demand attention. They simply appear. You breathe once, deeply. It catches at the top of your chest, then releases, like a line of script finishing its sentence. Your body recognizes it. Your mind does not interfere. A scholar of Roman domestic life once suggested that the villa experience was never designed for rest in the modern sense. It wasn't about escape from labor, but the ritualization of leisure, a rhythm cultivated across stone and sunlight, where rest was not absence, but a different form of presence. You feel that now? Your body is not idle, it is listening to stone, to air, to everything you didn't rush through today. Sleep drifts nearer, not like a wave crashing in, but like fog on a hill, slow and soft, enveloping. You hear one last bird, just a chirp, a breath of sound from the garden, as if the dove beside the fountain has stirred in its sleep. It fades. You imagine the fountain still running. You imagine the lantern in the peristyle casting its last flickers. You imagine the rose petals that had danced at your feet now lying still. You exhale, and this time, you don't try to follow it. You let it go. When the morning finds you again, it doesn't announce itself. It arrives the way a page turns in a well-read scroll, quiet, seamless, marked not by noise but by the change in texture. Light filters gently through the slit in the shutter, tracing a pale golden bar across your blanket. You stretch once, your arm sliding out from beneath the linen sheet, and feel the cool air greet your skin. There is no bell, no shout, no sudden obligation waiting just beyond the threshold of the day. You sit slowly, letting the weight of waking settle into your limbs before reaching for the jug and basin beside the bed. The water is cool. It smells faintly of terracotta. You pour with one hand, rinse the other, and repeat. This is not about washing away sleep. It's about greeting the day as if it too deserves a ritual. Your tunic lies folded on the bench. You dress with no hurry, tying the cord at your waist by feel alone. You don't need to look to do this anymore. The knot is the same each time, firm but not tight, capable of yielding if the air warms too quickly, or if the morning extends into indolence. Outside your room, the villa is already breathing. A servant sweeps the atrium tiles with long strokes of a bundled broom. The motion is more rhythmic than practical, a slow, meditative brushing of last night's dust into careful piles. He doesn't look up as you pass, nor do you speak. The language of this place, this hour, is shared silence. You return to the peristyle. Here, the day unfolds in green and gold. The fountain is bubbling softly, the water clearer now after the evening's rest. Sunlight slices through the colonnade in ribbons. Two finches hop along the edge of the tiled walkway, their claws clicking faintly as they pause to drink. A gentle breeze draws across the garden and lifts a tendril of vine along one pillar. It sways and falls again. On the stone bench, a tray waits. Someone has placed your breakfast there, a bowl of soft cheese, a cluster of grapes, slices of yesterday's bread, and a small dish of honey that has begun to catch the light in amber swirls. You eat slowly, not for fullness, but for continuity. Each bite feels like the second half of a thought that began yesterday. You tear a piece of bread, drag it through the honey, and listen to the garden. A bee drifts past your shoulder and circles the rosemary. The dog from the day before trots through the archway, ears flicking back and forth, tail sweeping side to side in gentle rhythm. He doesn't bark. He lies down on the warm stone with a heavy breath and waits for nothing. Someone is singing, not loudly, just a voice carried over the upper wall. Female, mid-register, untrained but steady. You don't recognize the words, and you don't need to. The sound slips over the garden like shade, folding itself into the spaces between the leaves. You finish your grapes one by one. A narrow column of ants moves beside the bench, working their way toward a fallen crumb. Their line bends perfectly around a pebble without breaking. You watch, not with focus, but with attention, and wonder how long they've known this route. A light cough from the corridor signals the approach of another guest. You don't turn. They pass without speaking, hands clasped, eyes forward. Perhaps they're headed to the small reading room near the western wing, where scrolls are kept cool and dry in low wooden cases, wrapped in linen. Or perhaps they're going to sit beside the vineyard wall, where the morning sun climbs slower and the air is thick with earth. A fringe letter from the late Empire once described these hours as drifting minutes without teeth, not biting, not dragging, not counted. It wasn't an insult, it was a blessing. Minutes that did not pursue, they floated. You rise from the bench, carry the tray to the basin. You pour the water slowly, rinsing your fingers of honey and grape juice. The water splashes lightly on the stone, and you dry your hands on a cloth left hanging nearby. Everything has a place. The villa doesn't hurry you. You begin walking toward the vineyard, past the herb garden, past the low stone wall where time spills like forgotten thread. The vines are awake now, stretching upward with quiet ambition, their tips curling around the wooden stakes set the previous spring. Each row holds more than grapes. It holds the hours that shaped it. A young worker is trimming leaves near the base of one plant. He looks up, nods, and returns to his work. The shears move without sound. His robe is dusty at the hem. A gourd of water rests nearby, cool against the stone. You stop and look down the row. The vines run straight toward the hill's edge, where the horizon folds gently into cypress and sky. You breathe deeply. There is no tension in your shoulders, no forward weight in your step. You are, in this moment, neither guest nor master, neither reader nor laborer. You are simply here, among leaves, among stone, among all the things that were built to wait. The vineyard breathes around you, rows of vines catching the morning breeze, leaves whispering with the same quiet intent as 1,000 turned pages. You walk slowly between the stakes, your fingertips grazing the edges of each plant. Not enough to disturb, just enough to say, I see you. The sun has climbed above the tree line, but it hasn't begun to burn yet. Its light falls in long, golden shafts, interrupted only by the lean of a post or the low curl of a branch. You pause halfway down the path to tie your sandal, not because it's come undone, but because the act feels like a way to measure the moment. A small wooden hut sits at the edge of the vineyard. You approach. Its door hangs open, revealing clay jars stacked along the walls and a shallow bench worn smooth with years of use. A wine press stands to one side, unused now, but prepared. The air inside is cool and smells of fermented skins and damp oak. A jug rests on the table. Next to it, a small cup. You pour without measuring. The wine is thin and slightly sour, meant for thirst, not ceremony. You take a sip and sit, the wood beneath you solid, unyielding, familiar, outside. A distant donkey brays once and is answered by another, farther down the hill. The sound folds back into the quiet, like a ripple into still water. From where you sit, you can see the full sprawl of the villa. Its rooftops curve in gentle arcs, sunlit now, dappled by trees. Smoke curls from a chimney near the kitchen, thin and transparent. On the far side, just beyond the stables, someone is mending a fence. You hear the tap of a mallet striking wood at wide, thoughtful intervals. It doesn't disrupt you. It completes the morning. A young boy runs across the courtyard, chased by the dog. They vanish into the shade before you can hear the outcome. You lean back against the hut wall, the jug beside you now half empty. The breeze rises. It brings with it the scent of pressed sage and the dry warmth of sun on clay tiles. You think again of the letter you read last month, a Roman farmer describing his villa near Tiber, how he spent whole days walking from tree to tree, checking on nothing, expecting nothing, simply counting time by how it chose to unfold across his land. You understand him more now. These are not idle hours. They are complete ones, back near the herb garden. The cook's assistant is plucking rosemary and bay. Her basket is half full. She moves carefully, choosing not what looks most beautiful, but what is ready. You admire the trust in that judgment. In the distance, another voice rises, low, melodic, someone reciting. You can't make out the words, but the cadence is familiar, measured, slow, ancient, the kind of rhythm that makes even the most mundane observations feel like wisdom. You follow the sound as you rise from the bench and make your way back down the vineyard path. The villa accepts your return with no change in pace. Its rhythms hold steady. The stone paths are warmer now. The columns cast slightly shorter shadows. You stop to watch the cook stir something in a large copper pot outside the kitchen door. Steam rises. The scent of garlic and oil wraps around your shoulders like a shawl. You continue walking. In the atrium, the pool reflects the sky in its afternoon brightness. A few leaves float at the edges, caught in quiet spirals. You dip your fingers into the water. It's cooler than you expect. You let them linger. Someone crosses the portico behind you. They pause. You don't turn. A cup is set on the wall beside you, earthenware, filled with chilled water. The figure moves on. You drink. The water tastes of stone and shadow, a fragment of graffiti, recorded by a scribe in Pompeii, once claimed, here. I found nothing, but also everything. Scholars have puzzled over it. Some call it meaningless. Others suggest it was part of a longer phrase. You think perhaps it was complete all along. You leave the cup on the wall, pass through the corridor, step once more into the tablinum, where your host now reclines, eyes closed, one hand resting on a scroll that remains unopened. He hears your footstep and gestures to the other couch. You sit. He doesn't open his eyes. He doesn't need to. The room is shaded and still. The only sound is the flutter of a bird's wings brushing the edge of the peristyle as it exits toward the open sky. You lean back. The cushion has grown warm, and somewhere outside, time folds again, quiet, uncreased, and exactly enough. Afternoon settles over the villa like a linen drape drawn over a sleeping child, soft, weightless, certain. The columns in the peristyle cast long shadows now, the light between them thin and honey-colored, as if the sun is beginning to measure its own breath. You sit quietly, eyes half closed, the cushion behind your shoulders conforming to the curve of your back as if it, too, has grown accustomed to your shape. No one speaks, no one interrupts. The villa enters its lightest silence. Your host remains on the opposite couch, still reclined, fingers now loosely curled around the corner of the scroll he hasn't yet read. He has the look of someone who knows that reading can wait, that there are days when even words must stand in line behind sunlight. A breeze threads through the open passage. It catches the linen curtain hanging between this room and the corridor. The cloth lifts and falls, making no sound, only the quiet dance of rhythm that belongs to all things designed to sway. In another place, it might seem like movement without purpose. Here, it feels like the room remembering how to breathe. A servant arrives. She carries a small wooden tray bearing a narrow bottle, 2 cups, and a dish of sliced pear drizzled with honey. She sets it down between you and your host without breaking eye contact with the floor, then vanishes as gently as she came. Your host gestures once, an open palm, a slight nod, and you pour. The liquid is golden, thick and with chills, wine, infused with pressed violets and herbs, poured in portions small enough to be mistaken for politeness, large enough to remind you that pleasure doesn't always need quantity. You take a sip. The sweetness lands first, then something floral, then coolness that spreads across the tongue like dusk across a courtyard. You bite into the pear. Its flesh yields easily, not mush, not crisp, just that perfect moment between resistance and surrender. Time slips further, somewhere in the corridor. Sandals shuffle slowly, soft steps, measured and light. A child again, perhaps, or a novice servant delivering a message he's already forgotten. He passes. You don't turn. The moment doesn't require an audience. The mosaic beneath your feet is warm now. You draw your sandals off with your toes, pressing your heels gently into the stone. Its heat has mellowed, not sharp like midday, but seasoned, diffused, the kind that settles into the soles like familiarity. Outside, bees circle the lavender again. You hear them before you see them, low, vibrating hums drawn along the edges of each flower stalk. One lands on the rim of the fountain and stays perfectly still for 3 full seconds before departing again. Even its pause seems choreographed. Your host speaks at last, not loudly, not formally. He says, "I once spent an entire year without leaving this hill." You glance toward him. His eyes remain closed. His voice doesn't rise. He continues, "Not because I feared the city, not because I disliked the road, but because I forgot why I needed to go." You nod, unsure if he hears. He opens one eye, lifts the cup, drinks, and then leans back. The words settle between you, not as advice, not even as revelation, just another note in the slow song of the day. You lean your head against the cushion, not to sleep, just to listen differently. The wall is cool behind your shoulder. A pigeon coos from somewhere near the roof tiles. The sound echoes faintly, filling a space you hadn't noticed was empty. You think again of the scroll resting on your host's knee, unread, unmoved. A fringe papyrus found near Herculaneum once recorded the habits of a philosopher who believed that unwritten thoughts were the most refined, that the best truths never left the chest, never sought ink, never required an audience. Perhaps he was right. You let your thoughts remain unwritten. A single petal detaches from the rosebush in the corner of the garden. It spins once midair, lands on the surface of the pool, and drifts lazily toward the center. You watch it, not because it means anything, but because it's happening. That's enough. Another servant enters with a bronze bowl. She sets it on the floor beside the couch and removes your cup. You nod. She bows slightly in return. You dip your fingers into the bowl. The water is cool, scented faintly with lemon balm. You cleanse your hands, not because they are dirty, but because the gesture marks a pause when she leaves. The room grows still again. The silence no longer feels like absence, it feels like shelter. The scroll remains unopened, the wine bottle nearly empty, the pears almost gone, outside. The sun has lowered past the outer wall, and the color in the garden has turned from gold to a kind of burnished peach, more shadow than color now, more suggestion than light. You think of leaving the couch, but you don't, not yet. You press your hand against the stone once more, feeling the last of the warmth as it drains back into the earth. And you remember again that this place is not a performance, it is a rhythm, and you are moving in it, even when you're still. Evening arrives without event. No bell chimes, no horn announces it. The light simply folds, quietly and inevitably, into something heavier, more golden, more deliberate. The villa does not react. It adjusts. Lamps are lit, their flames cupped low in polished bronze bowls. The peristyle fountain reflects a duller sky now. Its shimmer traded for something steadier. The rhythm continues, slow and unhurried. You rise from the couch. Your limbs feel long, softened by wine and stillness. You pass into the corridor, feet bare again, the stone beneath them cooled from the shadow now falling over the house. The mosaic floors retain a whisper of warmth, echoes of sun trapped in grout and tile. You pause at the end of the walkway and look outward. The sky is shifting from amber to blue. Overhead, swallows dart and turn with no destination but the air itself. A bat follows, silent, carving its own path with stutters and curves that defy rhythm. You step through the archway into the outer courtyard. The vines overhead cast lattice shadows against the wall. Somewhere behind you, laughter, soft, not intrusive. You don't turn. The kitchen glows faintly. Someone stokes the fire. An iron clang, a puff of smoke, the scent of grilled meat, herbs, and sweet musk drifts toward you. You inhale deeply. The food is not yours yet. but it belongs to the evening. You continue walking, past the stables, past the amphorae lined neatly in a row, terracotta jars sealed with wax and marked in faded ink, oil, wine, vinegar, dates. Their labels wear the patience of time. You trail your fingers across one. It's cool, solid, unbothered. In the smaller garden behind the villa, the wind moves differently, quieter, more inward. Here, lavender has given way to laurel, and the path winds rather than cuts. You follow it instinctively, not for purpose, not for destination, only because it seems right. You pass a small altar, stone, weather worn, tucked beneath a tree. There are offerings scattered at its base, wilted flowers, 2 figs, a coil of garlic, nothing formal, nothing ceremonial, just acknowledgement. You sit on the low bench nearby. The wood is smooth, grooved from decades of use. The armrest bears the faint scratchings of someone's name, but time has worn the letters until they mean only memory. You lean back. You're not alone. A servant has come to light the courtyard lamps. He moves quietly between stations, lifting the flame from one to the next with the tip of a pine splint. His motions are practiced, unhurried. He hums to himself, tunic swaying slightly with each step. The tune is neither happy nor sad. It simply exists. You watch as he finishes and disappears through the kitchen door. The villa, now lit from within, glows like a hearth left open to the night. Its walls breathe warmth. Its roofline blends with the rising dusk. You remain seated. A cup of spiced wine has been left on the stone wall nearby. Still warm. You don't question who placed it there. You lift it, sip slowly. Cinnamon, honey, maybe clove. The cup fits easily in your hand, slightly rounded from years of use. You cradle it the way one might cradle a thought still forming. A breeze catches the hem of your robe and lifts it gently before letting it fall again. In the branches above you, a night bird calls, not sharply, just once, as if to note that the day has changed and that it, too, is watching. You close your eyes. The warmth of the cup presses into your palm. The garden smells of old herbs, turned soil, distant firewood. A scholar once speculated that Roman villas were designed not to display wealth, but to cultivate quiet. Not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of choice. Every colonnade, every angle of wall, every bench placed beneath a tree, all built for the specific luxury of stopping. You understand now. This is not retirement. It is return to rhythm, to space, to the self that only appears when there is nothing left to do. You take another sip. The wine is cooler now, but sweeter. You rise from the bench and walk once more through the garden path. The grass edges are slightly damp, and your feet brush dew from laurel leaves. Back in the peristyle, the fountain still runs, unchanged. The petals floating on its surface have rearranged slightly. Nothing deliberate, just different. Your host stands near the far wall, his arms crossed. He's looking up, not at the stars yet, but at the space where stars will soon appear. He doesn't speak. You join him. The villa behind you hums with the sound of bowls being cleared, water poured, wooden shutters drawn closed one by one. You don't need to say anything. He doesn't need to look. Together, you stand still, at rest, while the sky prepares to turn once again. The stars arrive as a quiet suggestion. No grand entrance, no dazzling shimmer, just one point of light, then another, gently blooming above the blackened silhouette of a cypress line beyond the villa. You and your host remain side by side in the peristyle, eyes tilted upward, breaths slowed not by awe but by agreement. This part of the day was always meant to be shared, not explained. The fountain continues its soft rhythm. The ripples catch a bit of lamp glow, moving in lazy arcs. One petal remains, drifting near the center. You imagine its journey began hours ago, that it has simply been circling all this time, uninterrupted, untroubled, and unnoticed, until now. You nod once to your host, who responds with the briefest glance, then steps away, sandals whispering across the stone. You don't follow immediately. You remain a moment longer, watching as the constellations emerge, not in order, not all at once, but as if each were waiting for its own moment to be seen. Eventually, you turn. The villa's interior has dimmed. The lamps burn low, their wicks trimmed. The halls echo faintly with the sound of gentle footfalls. You pass through the atrium again, water quiet, shadows deep. Somewhere to your left, a lute leans against a wall, one string loose, humming faintly in the moving air. Your sleeping room is dark when you arrive. A small flame burns in a shallow dish, enough to cast one flickering line across the opposite wall. Your bed is just as you left it, but now the pillow carries the scent of fresh laurel. Someone has tucked a folded cloth beneath the edge of the blanket, still warm from the kitchen stone. You sit at the edge of the bed and breathe once, then again. Each breath is longer than the last. You wash your hands, slowly, in the basin. The water is cooler now. You dry them on the same cloth you used that morning. The ritual repeats, not from necessity, from care. Your robe slips off easily. The linen whispers against your skin. You fold it neatly and place it on the stool. When you lie down, the mattress greets you as though it had been waiting, not since yesterday, but since the world was first made soft. You stretch beneath the blanket. The sheet is cool at first, then warm. Your head finds the pillow, and you let the air pass in and out with no thought. From the garden, a breeze. It slides beneath the shutter, bringing with it the smell of basil and cooling soil. A moth flutters once, strikes the lamp, and vanishes into shadow. You don't flinch. The quiet deepens. You trace with your fingertips the seam of the blanket. Your mind begins to blur its edges, the tiles beneath your feet earlier today, the smooth rim of the wine cup, the curve of the fig tree's lowest branch. They all begin to dissolve into one gentle sensation. A single image returns to you, the petal on the water, still circling, still carried. A writer once claimed that Roman villas were repositories of breath, places where each exhale took longer, stretched further, and returned less burdened. He wrote that if you stayed long enough, the villa would begin to breathe for you. You believe him? Your breath is slower now, and steadier, and the villa keeps rhythm. In the courtyard, a nightjar sings, its call low and even, stitched between silences. You hear it to the then don't. You wonder if it was ever real, or simply the air making music of its own accord. You close your eyes, not from fatigue, from fullness. This day has been neither eventful nor empty. It has held you, quietly, in rhythms older than memory. You don't feel that you've passed through time. You feel as if time has passed gently through you. The shutters creak once in the wind. A soft step echoes somewhere distant. The last lamp dims, and the petal drifts still. Dawn returns not with fanfare, but with a gentle shift in color. It begins at the edge of the horizon, gray turning lavender, lavender yielding to the faintest trace of gold. The shutters of your room remain closed, yet the light finds its way through the smallest seams, painting lines across the floorboards like slow-moving water. You lie awake for a while, not out of restlessness, but because it feels good to be still while the world changes outside. The villa doesn't stir right away. Even the birds hold their breath a little longer, as if the night has not yet finished what it came to offer. You rise quietly, your robe a familiar weight around your shoulders, and pad barefoot across the cool floor. The basin holds a fresh layer of water. You dip your hands in and feel it greet you, not sharp, not bracing, just enough to make your skin remember the air. You open the shutter. Beyond the wooden slats, the garden waits, cloaked in dew and early light. The fountain's surface lies still, untroubled. The rosebush at the far corner has opened a new bloom overnight. You step out. The morning has texture. Each breath carries the crispness of undisturbed air, tinged with time and earth. The stone beneath your feet is wet in patches where condensation has gathered. A leaf clings to the heel of your foot as you walk. You do not brush it off in the peristyle. The first servant has begun her rounds. She sweeps in wide, slow arcs, the bristles of her broom making faint, rasping sounds. She doesn't look up, but her rhythm pauses as you pass. A subtle acknowledgement. You nod once, and she resumes. At the edge of the colonnade, a small table has been set. There's no cloth, just a bowl of cold fruit, a loaf of bread with one end already sliced, and a pitcher of watered wine, chilled overnight in the kitchen well. You take a seat on the low stool nearby. The bench holds the imprint of the night's air, and you shift once before settling in. You break the bread. The crust cracks faintly, and a warm scent escapes. Grain and yeast and smoke. You dip it in the wine, not for taste, for rhythm. This is the kind of meal that asks for nothing but presence. A bird lands on the lip of the fountain. It doesn't drink. It stands for a long moment, then lifts again, wings beating once before disappearing into the slowly brightening sky. You eat slowly. Each bite feels tethered to the morning itself, to the idea that food can simply be part of waking, not an interruption of it. The fruit is soft and slightly chilled. The bread is enough. A text attributed to a minor philosopher, one whose name no longer survives, described morning as the most truthful part of the day. His logic was not moral, but spatial, that each action at dawn echoes more clearly, that even footsteps contain more meaning. It's hard to know what he meant exactly, but you understand him now. After breakfast, you walk, not far, just to the small garden behind the west wall, where the hedges form low shapes and the path bends slightly to the left before rejoining itself. The garden is nothing ornate. Rosemary, mint, lavender, all contained within low stone borders. But this time of day, it holds something close to sacred. The soil is dark from night moisture. The bees have not arrived yet. A spiderweb connects two branches above your head, silver in the light. You pause beneath it, not out of fear, but respect. The villa's outer edge lies just beyond this garden. You step toward it, through the low wooden gate, onto the path that leads to the olive grove. The trees there are ancient, thick-trunked, their bark deeply scored by weather and time. Some bear fresh growth, others have dropped their fruit. You walk among them slowly, brushing your fingers along the leaves as you pass. The grove holds the coolness of pre sunrise even as light creeps higher. A man is already working at the far end, gathering fallen olives into a basket with both hands. He hums as he does so, off key, but with conviction. The sound merges with the wind, disappears, returns. He does not stop to greet you, and you do not interrupt him. There's peace in this mutual solitude. You sit on a flat stone beneath one of the larger trees. Its branches shade you still, though the sun begins to warm the tops of the hills. The stone holds the night's breath. You let your hands rest in your lap. A breeze stirs the upper branches. Leaves shift in patches. Sunlight flashes through, then vanishes again. You imagine the villa from a distant square, quiet, symmetrical, resting like a held breath above the valley floor. You picture the columns, the garden, the unlit rooms waiting to be inhabited again. You smile, not at a joke, at a rhythm. You rise from the stone and make your way back toward the gate. The path no longer feels damp. Your sandals make a soft brushing sound against the dust. The villa awaits, not with hunger, not with questions, but with welcome. By mid-morning, the house has settled into its usual pace, neither idle nor busy, just consistent. The air has lost its chill, though the shadows are still long. In the central courtyard, the pool reflects the curved edge of the roofline and the shifting limbs of the fig tree that leans over its northern rim. You sit again beneath the portico, this time with your back against one of the columns, legs extended, a plate of almonds and dried apricots resting beside you. Nothing asks for your attention. You offer it freely anyway. The servants move with the ease of repetition, their tasks embedded not in urgency, but in memory. One collects linens from a clothesline stretched across the rear garden. Another carries a clay jug of water toward the atrium, balancing it with the confidence of someone who has walked this path 1,000 times. A younger boy sweeps the edges of the corridor where dust collects in soft ridges. His broom catches in a crack between two tiles. He pauses, frowns slightly, and gently pries the bristles free. The whole moment lasts seconds, but its grace could teach entire lectures on patience. You chew slowly, the apricot pulling apart on your tongue, its sweetness faint and woody from the tablinum, the soft scrape of a stylus. Someone is writing. You imagine the wax tablet held steady in one hand, the other shaping letters that will disappear as soon as they've served their purpose. Notes for a letter, a list of supplies, a borrowed phrase from Seneca. The point is not permanence, it's practice. You hear the page, even if it leaves no trace. A passing breeze lifts the edge of your tunic. You smooth it again, casually. Your fingers find the embroidered edge, a loop of thread left uneven by the woman who mended it last week. You trace it without thought. The household cat appears beside you. It does not meow. It doesn't look at you. It stretches once, circles twice, and settles against your left thigh. The heat of its fur presses through the cloth. You let it be. In the southern corner of the garden, a woman tends to a row of flowering herbs. She pinches off the spent blossoms, brushing them gently between her thumb and forefinger before dropping them into a basket. She isn't harvesting for use, she's pruning for renewal. Each cut is a promise to the plant. You turn slightly and glance toward the open door of the small library. Inside, the room holds a kind of ceremonial stillness, scrolls arranged by subject, each resting in its own niche, bound with thin cords, labeled in quiet script. No one is reading at the moment, yet the room feels awake. In the center, a large table with a waxed surface. On it, a single oil lamp, a reed pen, a folded cloth, nothing else. Some scholars believe private libraries and villas weren't meant for study in the modern sense. They were sanctuaries for pace, a place to enter without needing answers, where one could unfurl a scroll and read not for knowledge, but for the gentle pattern of Latin echoing softly off stone. You understand this now. You rise and walk toward the door. Inside, your sandals make no sound on the tiled floor. You choose a scroll at random, one without title, its cord faded from sun. You take it to the window seat. The cushion gives easily beneath your weight. You rest the scroll across your knees and begin to unroll it. The ink has faded slightly, but it holds. You read not from the top, but from the center. A line about a river, another about a garden, then a passage describing the way moonlight falls on a terracotta roof, written in language so careful it might have been composed by someone seated in this very room centuries before. The cat follows you. It hops onto the sill and lies down beside your hip. Back to the window, paws tucked under like soft stones. You read for a while, not in haste. You reread certain lines, not for clarity, but for comfort. Outside, the fountain murmurs. A pair of voices float by, a servant and a guest, speaking of olives and soil moisture. Their tone is casual, yet complete. They pass out of hearing. The cat shifts. You look down and realize you've been smiling for some time. A fringe commentary found in the margins of a household account ledger once suggested that villas taught their owners nothing so much as how to rest responsibly, not lazily, not idly, but in full awareness of where each moment leads. You close the scroll. You don't mark your place. You won't need to return to the same sentence. Its meaning has already joined the day. You rise from the cushion, set the scroll gently back in its niche, and step back into the sun. The cat remains behind, unmoved, guarding what needs no protection. You pause in the colonnade, look out over the garden, and let the late morning greet you fully, as though you'd just arrived. The villa eases into the midday hush, not with stillness, but with continuity. The sun has risen to its peak and hovers directly overhead, drawing the shortest shadows of the day beneath the colonnades. From your place in the peristyle, the light feels almost vertical, sharp in the corners, diffused where it touches the curved rim of the fountain. A few bees hover there now, dipping cautiously toward the water, their wings catching the light in brief, iridescent flashes. You walk slowly toward the atrium, its basin, once shimmering with the glow of morning, now lies in deeper shadow. The water there is darker, cooler. You kneel beside it. A single olive leaf floats at the center, spinning in slow circles with no apparent cause. You don't reach in, you simply watch. The household's energy narrows. Some are sleeping. Others retreat to shaded rooms to read, to write, to think in silence. One servant leans against the kitchen doorway, eating a fig with his back to the sun. He doesn't move when you pass. He nods once, the way one does when no words are needed. You climb a short flight of steps that leads to the upper terrace. Here, the wind feels higher, more curious. It moves between terracotta pots where sage and basil grow thick and fragrant. The tiled roof extends before you, like a low horizon, its clay shimmering softly under the midday sun. You step out into the light. The terrace looks over the hills. Olive groves ripple in uneven rows. A cart moves slowly along a distant road, its wheel catching a rut, then steadying again. Near the bottom of the hill, a shepherd leads 3 sheep across a narrow track. None of them appear to know exactly where they're going, but none are in a hurry to arrive. You sit on the low wall at the edge of the terrace. The stone is warm beneath you. You press your palm to it and let the heat soak into your skin. From here, you can see the entire structure of the villa, the layout of rooms, the sweep of the inner courtyard, the line where garden becomes grove. Every part fits into the next with a calm that feels practiced, not designed for efficiency, designed for breath. Your host joins you. He does not speak right away. He carries 2 small cups and a flask of chilled wine. He pours one for you, hands it over, and takes the other for himself. The gesture is so fluid it feels inevitable, like the tilt of the sun or the way the breeze curls against the wall. You drink together. The wine is pale, cool, faintly herbal. Something like fennel or marjoram lingers on the edge of taste. You sip it slowly, the flavor unfolding with each breath. Your host says, "This is the part of the day that no one writes about." You look at him. He continues. They speak of triumphs, of forums, of roads and baths. But not this, not the sound of birds when even the bees are quiet. You both sit with that. There's no need to fill the space. He finishes his wine, sets the cup down, then rises and leaves, saying nothing more. You remain. A small lizard scurries across the tiles, stops near your foot, lifts its head toward the sun. It blinks twice and disappears between the stones. The air has shifted slightly, warmer now, thicker with the press of midday. The garden lies below, unmoved, its plants drooping slightly with the weight of heat. Someone waters them later in the day. They know this. They wait. You descend the stairs again. In the corridor, a door stands ajar. You peek inside. The room is lined with scrolls, but not books of law or philosophy, recipes, fragments of poetry, lists of herbs and household inventories, all written in the same tight, confident script. Someone, at some point, considered these worth recording. You open one at random. A passage about preserving quince. It's detailed, soaked in wine, boiled with honey, stored in small ceramic pots sealed with wax. There's a note in the margin for winter comfort. You read it twice. You smile. You return the scroll to its place. Step into the sun again. A dove flutters from the roof. A terracotta tile clatters onto the gravel path. No one comes to investigate. These sounds are not problems. They are punctuation. A fringe manuscript, attributed to an unnamed architect from the late Republic, once described Roman villas as places designed not for escape, but for deliberate forgetting. Not forgetting in the painful sense, but in the way that fruit forgets the branch, or that a path forgets its maker. You remember this line now and understand. You pause beneath the fig tree. One fruit hangs low, heavy and dark. You lift it gently, twist once, and it releases into your palm. The skin is warm, soft. You bite. Sweetness fills your mouth, not sharp, not loud, just enough to remind you that this place doesn't reward action. It rewards attention. You finish the fig, wipe your fingers on your robe, and walk back toward the atrium. The fountain continues. The leaf has stopped spinning. It rests now, centered, just where it needs to be. The late afternoon enters gently, like a familiar servant carrying no burden, announcing itself only in the angle of light on the floor and the subtle thickening of shadows across the garden wall. You sit again in the peristyle, cross-legged on a low cushion. The stone beneath it holds the memory of heat. The air carries more stillness now, stillness made not of silence, but of completion. The day has not ended. It has exhaled. From the far end of the corridor, a bell sounds, not loud, not commanding. A soft chime meant only for those already listening. Its tone signals that the evening meal will be prepared soon, not demanded but offered, even in hunger. This place does not hurry. You stand and walk past the fountain, its water now shaded and cooler, disturbed only by the occasional drift of a petal or the lazy sip of a bee. The triclinium is already being readied, the same low couches, the same smooth table, a different arrangement of light. One of the younger servants leans over a lamp, adjusting its wick with the tip of a bronze pin. Another carries in a tray of figs and almonds, their scent rising subtly above the olive oil now heating in the kitchen. You wash your hands in the basin. The water has warmed slightly, drawn from the stone cistern where it rests all day beneath the sun. You dry your fingers on a cloth woven with a faded border, purple once, now softened to brown. A few guests arrive, some familiar, some new. There's little conversation at first, only nods, only the quiet acknowledgement of shared appetite. You recline on the same couch as the day before, your robe gathered loosely around you. The host enters and takes his place without announcement. The food arrives gradually, a stew of lentils and garlic, rich with cumin and herbs, a dish of roasted carrots, sweetened with wine, salted fish wrapped in fig leaves. The flavors are modest, but they belong here, honest and grounded, shaped by the fire and the hand that tends it. You eat without commentary. There is no need to praise or critique. Everyone seems to understand that the food, like the air, has done its job simply by arriving. The conversation turns slowly. Someone speaks of the harvest, how the olives are fewer this season, but the oil is sweeter. Another mentions a distant cousin in Capua who plans to build a summer house entirely from reclaimed marble. Your host rolls his eyes at this with quiet amusement. He speaks only once. A house is not measured by its stone, he says, but by the silence it allows. No one disagrees. The wine is poured again, cool, light, infused faintly with rose petals this time. It settles into your mouth like an afterthought. Someone begins to hum, a tune from their childhood, half remembered, with pauses in all the right places. The hum becomes a line of verse. Then a second voice joins. Not harmony, not dissonance, just presence. The room becomes fuller with each sip. The air has thickened with laughter, not loud, not chaotic. So just low pulses of amusement passed between people who know when to speak and when to let the fire talk for them. A servant clears the bowls, leaving behind only the plates of fruit and nuts. The figs have been split open, the seeds glistening like little rubies in the lamplight. You press one between your fingers before tasting it. It's warm and perfumed, a memory of the afternoon turned edible. Outside, the cicadas begin, faint at first, then gathering in rhythm, not in competition with the evening, but as its score. The villa does not flinch, it breathes in time with them. A fragment of a poem is recited, something about lovers lost between olive rows, their footsteps forever pressed into the soil. You do not recognize the source. You do not need to. You close your eyes briefly, not from fatigue, from fullness. The meal winds down slowly. Cups are drained to their final sips. Cushions are adjusted. Sandals are gathered. One guest rises to leave, his departure marked only by a squeeze of the shoulder. A wordless farewell. You rise to two. The host bows his head as you pass. You do the same. The corridors are dim now. Lamps have been lowered, curtains drawn. The scent of time lingers in the air, clinging to the folds of your robe and the curve of your palm. You press your hand to the wall as you walk, just briefly, to feel the way it holds the day. In your room, the window is open. The breeze carries the music of insects, the far-off call of a night bird, and the soft creak of a shutter shifting with the wind. You remove your robe, fold it once, place it on the stool. You lie down, no adjustments needed. The bed has remembered you. Your head finds the pillow's edge. Your breath returns to its pattern, and the villa, outside your door, continues to hum. Not for you, but with you, always just enough. The final evening arrives without intention. It doesn't draw a line. It doesn't declare itself. It simply enters. As all things have here, softly, with quiet confidence, you lie in bed again, the same linen beneath you, the same rhythm in your breath. But something in the air has shifted, not dramatically, gently. The villa, in its way, is beginning to bow. Outside your open window, the wind has grown more tender. The trees murmur at a lower pitch. The scent of the garden carries a tinge of damp stone, fresh rosemary, and cool ash. Somewhere deep in the house, a door latches, a lamp is extinguished, then another still. You sit up, not to begin again, just to acknowledge. The moonlight that spills across the floor is fuller now, its path unbroken, cutting a single long stroke of silver across the tile. You rise slowly, your robe light across your shoulders, and step barefoot into the corridor. The walls, once filled with color and motion, hold only silhouettes at this hour. The villa belongs not to action, but to memory. You pass through the peristyle. The fountain's voice has changed. It no longer speaks in arcs and ripples, but in low drips and deep echoes. You kneel beside it one last time, touch the water. It greets your skin with familiarity. You walk to the edge of the portico and look outward. Beyond the outer garden wall, the hills roll silently beneath moonlight. No oxen now, no carts, no shadows moving across the path. The world is asleep. The road is forgotten, and the stars are too numerous to count. You sit on the low wall. You let the night unfold around you. A final breeze lifts your hair, touches your face, and continues past. as if it has somewhere else to be. And now, let your breath soften. You're not leaving the villa, not really. You're carrying it with you, the quiet of its corridors, the coolness of its shaded tiles, the sound of a leaf drifting across a garden path. All of that remains, stitched softly into the lining of your thoughts. There's no need to review the day. It has already folded itself neatly behind your eyes. You walked, you sat, you listened, you ate slowly, you said almost nothing, and yet you were entirely present. Let your shoulders release whatever still holds weight. Let your hands rest gently on the linen beside you. There's no ink to blot, no scroll to roll, no lamp to trim, just this stillness, just the breath, and the memory of a fig tree leaning quietly above the fountain, dropping its fruit only when it's ready. Somewhere, a distant bell tolls, but not for waking, for completion. Let yourself join that rhythm. Let the day's last petal fall gently onto still water. Let the edge of your mind slip past the garden wall, where moonlight clings to the outer stones like quiet hands. You are not lost in sleep. You are returning to a room with no door, to a path that doesn't curve, to a silence that remembers your name. And when morning comes, when the shutters crack and the light spills in, you may rise or you may remain, because the villa and everything it taught you waits quietly, still turning its pages, still